trail cameras are an important part of the physical security of your property and your ability to know what's going on as far as wildlife, human activity, and otherwise just day-to-day activity to kind of document the journey of your farm. Let's talk a little bit about setting up trail cameras. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. If you have agricultural property, you have equipment out there, you have campsites, you have a variety of things, trail cameras are an important positive security device to get you going. They're not too expensive. They're really worth the investment. Now, these are just the little cheap trail cameras, and I'm going to tell you two things about this camera right here. Number one, you may notice that something has been boring in here on this side, and then when I got to this particular camera, it didn't have a card in it. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. That boring is probably an insect. And then I noticed on historical pictures for this one, the lens was messed up. And using your finger is probably not the best idea. I'll get a cloth. But my point is, there is no SD card in that camera. And all my cameras get an SD card. And those SD cards are rotated so that we can, again, look at the stuff back on site. Another factor is this tree's in the way. So I need to cut this out. This little tree is grown up, and so it's going to trigger the camera unnecessarily. So what we're looking for is a clear line of sight, and I probably should clear this one as well, but we want a clear line of sight for whatever object we want to secure. So this particular camera is set on a blind spot off of this road. Now, of course, I'm telling you where my cameras are. Now you're going to know where the cameras are, that kind of thing. If you see one camera, there's actually more than one someplace else. The key of it is if somebody comes flying up this road or wandering up this road where the shed is, I want to see the people coming through. I want to have positive evidence. Most criminals don't think about that kind of stuff. I also have a trail that goes through the woods over there and a trail right here that has good deer tracking through it. So deer come through. I like to know they're coming through. They tend to come through and head to the back. I also have another access point over here. So this particular camera picks up quite a bit of traffic. Now, every camera has my name on it, my last name, and then the camera number. Why is that important? Well, each camera is tracked in a product called OnX Hunt. It's also tracked on other GPS tracking through the Garmin so that I can see where the cameras are, and then my photographs are geotagged and I can see what they see. So if I'm looking at a certain buck that's coming through, and by the way, I don't hunt. I'm learning how to hunt. I enjoy wildlife. I do a lot of observation. I do a lot of habitat management. So if I want to see the progression of animals and the quality of the animals over time, I kind of have to know where we're looking. Are we looking north, south, east, or west? What are we catching? And then, of course, what has been changing. So for example, this tree down here that we cut down and haven't cleaned up yet could be impacting what comes down these two little trails here. So you can see there's a little trail here. And I just felt a bunch of spider webs, so nothing's come down these trails recently. But ultimately, the camera location, if you were to come through these trails and access this spot from behind, so back there are some other trails on this particular property. If you were to access that spot from behind, you're already in the camera's range before you know the camera exists, because the point of interest is over here. Now, these are battery-powered cameras, and they're taking a lot of battery. Solar power cameras are great, but see that little tree out in the middle of the frame there? If I was to put a camera on that tree, it has good solar, I'd have a lens flare. So I wouldn't get a good picture of what's going on. So usually what I do is I take my little smartphone out, I clear out around the tree, and this one hasn't been cleared out in a long time, and I'll get behind the tree, I'll come up right up on the camera, and I'll put my camera right in front of the trail camera to see what we're going to see. And that gives me an idea of what's going on, of what we're going to see. I don't have to take any test pictures, and God forbid that battery go dead before I get going. The damn thing takes 8 batteries. And then I also have this, so I can pop a card out, put a new card in. So I open the door, check the battery levels, pop a card out, pop a new card in, take this little baby someplace else, check out what's on the card. Now, what concerns me on this one is that the card is missing. And I used to keep track of my SD card numbers. So every SD card has a number on it, and when I get back, I keep track of, basically this is camera B1, and if it had chip 6, then if I knew chip 6 was missing, which I'm missing. I think I'm missing number 3 and 5, and I don't see it on the ground down here. That leads me to believe that somebody did something they don't want to have on camera. And now with the trails, we are having some ATV problems. And so it could have been somebody racing an ATV, and on their way back from the back side of the property, they saw the camera and decided to pop the chip. Now, if camera and batteries are missing, that would be even more likely that a human did it. But these things have nice little locks on them. So, you know, some human had to do this and then close it back up. Because another secret of trail cameras, especially for wildlife monitoring, is that you need to leave them for months at a time before you're going to get good wildlife pictures. Because me just touching it and running my hands on it, I got scent on that thing. And so animals will smell that. And then some animals, I suspect they can see the infrared, and they can see the night vision thing on the camera. And so if they know it's there, if they're not familiar with it, if they see something new in their environment, they'll tend to stay away from it. So I don't move around my cameras. My cameras will be in the same place for 1 or 2 years at a time, and I'll get so much better pictures after maybe about a month of that camera being out there. So I'm going to put that chip in, and if that door is closed, I'm not necessarily going to know that the chip is missing. So I'm looking at some better cameras that have a GPS, and they have the cellular service, so that I can put the camera in place and leave it. Now, there are other cameras in here, and so if you have a multi-camera situation, you're going to have the observable camera that's obviously looking at what it's protecting, and then you're going to have the invisible camera that is also able to see the observable camera and some of the area in which you're protecting. So the primary element of the area you're protecting. Now, I don't want to go into a bunch of the science and theory of this, because we do have classes that we can talk about security when it comes to your home security or perimeter security. As far as we don't go as far as in the Tempest, but if this was a Wi-Fi camera, there are scramblers that can just mash your camera and then they can walk right in and walk right out. You never know. Most cameras don't take a picture every time they need to take a picture. This camera was set on video, by the way, and if somebody took off the SD card to go see what was on it, they would have seen a lot of garbage pictures because its night vision doesn't work too well. And during the day, the camera is really slow to pick up. So if you ran by the camera, it's not going to see you. Now, when I switch it to picture mode, which allows me more battery, you can't run by the camera without it picking you up. And so picture mode gives me enough information to evidence, and that's the key word here. These cameras are here for evidence. So if somebody should ever come onto the property and steal something, I will now have evidence of the activity, and then it'll be easier to file charges on the person, because we're going to start criminally trespassing people. In fact, my insurance company said that I am obligated to criminally trespass, otherwise they won't cover the theft of equipment or breaking and entering, that kind of thing. So we're trying to get evidence of somebody breaking and entering, and if they see this camera and destroy this camera, and we have footage of them destroying a camera, it makes it all that more suspicious of the particular activity. Now you're saying, well, Justin, you know, I got $250 in cameras out here, and then I got to change batteries all the time. And well, again, you have to choose the appropriate technology. If this building had power in it, I would put cameras on the building with power, and I would have the trail cam as my auxiliary. Otherwise, I have my trail cam and I have auxiliary trail cams, and they're set up in such a way that if someone tampers with this camera, I've got footage of that. And if somebody breaks into the building or accesses something that they're unauthorized to do so, I've got evidence of that too, from two perspectives. That way, if they're hiding their face, you know, whatever, I'm going to get them. Now that means I have to maintain the areas so that we don't have moving branches. And I know I just stepped on this down here, but I'll have to open the shed up and get some tools out to cut this. We'll do that after the video. But I got to make sure I maintain this area, and then where the other camera is, make sure it's maintained so that it doesn't make the other camera obvious. So there's been L-box cameras and log cameras and you know, hidden cameras. You can put a camera inside of a building too. So by the way, when they open the door up, smile, you're on candid camera. So do you understand what we're talking about here? We're talking about collecting evidence. And now you're probably also saying that they stole more than $250 of stuff. What good are $250 cameras? The insurance. If you're properly insured, you have proper evidence, your insurance company will cover the losses. And then it's not a big deal. If you have other issues, like you want to make sure people are not on the property, let's say you have a remote hunting cabin, you want to make sure there isn't some other hunting party out there when you arrive with your guns, then you can use different kinds of cameras to see in advance. There's also CCTV systems you can use. It just depends on what you're protecting. And again, we can talk about that specifically. Another thing you want to look at is these cameras being in place for a year or two. You want to make sure the straps don't dry rot and that they don't leave, dig into the tree too much. A lot of times you want to put these on posts and you can get a better use out of it. What I like about a post, I don't like to screw them into the trees. If you put it on a post and it has an external battery pack, I got one camera that can use an external battery pack. You can then mount the battery pack on the same post and you have much better usage. In fact, I'm looking for some of the more open areas to go ahead and just put a camera on a post, cellular camera, solar panel, and also a battery pack. And so I can put the cameras back to the sun, which would give me good moonlighting, and then the solar panel would give me basically the power it needs to keep the battery topped off, and then I would get better footage. So any of our conservation areas have multiple cameras on them. Any of our trails have multiple cameras on them. All trailheads, all road access points will have cameras. And the key again is who's coming and going, what's coming and going, are we having animals get out? So what about a camera in your animals shelter so that if you have predators, you know what actual predators are getting in with the chickens? Now again, you're saying, oh my gosh, it's a lot of money to get all these cameras. Most of these cameras will last for 3 to 5 years. And so if it can save you a $400 breeding buck, or it can save you a $12,000 piece of equipment, then either way is a good solution. Now in my situation, and you probably saw in a previous video, I documented someone took an ATV into a protected area, a watershed, where there's a spring and a wetland. And so I got to go figure out who that is. Now in another video, I'll talk about the detective nature of that, how we detect and figure out who did what. But again, trail cameras are a very important part of that. Now we have modern wildlife cameras that can actually help you inventory the types of wildlife. They can help you, they can see much better. These are not those cameras. These cameras I got, they're probably 50 bucks a piece. And I primarily got them just to get them out here. And this is camera B1. Obviously there's a B2 camera somewhere, B5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 camera possibly. But the key is the camera unobstructed? Is it at a height that is going to get people and animals? Does it have a clear line of sight? Is it going to get sunlight or moonlight directly in it, which could mess up the night infrared? Is it on a tree that's thick enough not to wave around? Is it in a position where you're seeing the assets of value as well as being covered by another angle? Because anybody could walk up behind the camera and just put a bag over it if they were intending to steal something. Does your camera collect evidence that are admissible in court or useful for your insurance company? Does your camera provide you confidence that if you were out here by yourself and you had an alert go off, that you know that you were the only person on the property, or that a big bear is coming your way? See, trail cameras have multiple purposes. It's really an investment. Now, if you want help designing your plan, I can show you some aspects that we use when we use Google Maps. If you're using OnX, if you're using Garmin Homebase, if you're using an ATAC or different types of environments, we can show you how to make that more useful because these trail cameras are your eyes and ears in many cases while you're outside of your property or through seasonal variation. Isn't it nice to come out and know kind of where the animals are? Isn't it kind and nice to know that your animals are safe if you've got domesticated animals? Anyway, I'm not going to turn this into a whole guide. It's just a podcast. I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead, where we teach you how to get the maximum value from your land. And unfortunately, in this time and age, as your land increases in value, people get jealous, people get concerned, and many people feel entitled to use your land without permission. And so how do we protect your asset? How do we protect your interest and reduce your liability? Trail cameras is an awesome way to get started. Thanks for watching. Ask your questions at www.prosperityhomestead.com. And I'll see you in the next podcast.